Welcome to the Good Old Football Podcast. I am your host, Matt Edwards. Appreciate you joining me. Appreciate Auto Magic on the beats for us, as always. Let's start with this. I think it was a big topic over the weekend. It's a rare situation where you've got what's a big story, a potential story in October that will also be a big story in the offseason, and that's this. Who is going to replace Freddie Kitchens in Cleveland? Who is going to be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns because they didn't get it right? Freddie Kitchens is not a human being who should be coaching an NFL team. Ask yourself this. Would any of the other 31 teams have hired this guy? That just kind of hit me. Would anyone else have hired him? And I get that he came in and he did fine, but guess what? 2 years ago, he came in and did fine as the offensive coordinator last year. 2 years ago, I think he was a running backs coach for the Cardinals. And then you get this collection of players together, this collection of egos between Baker, OBJ, and that's by NFL standards. 90% of these guys have egos. By NFL standards, those are egos. And the reason that I pinned this on Freddie, this 2-5 start, by the way, the Browns also had 2 wins at the end of October last year, more on that in a second. You can point to a lot of things, but the one that sticks out to me is the Browns are not that far away. They're not. They're in the games. They outplayed the Seahawks. They hung in there with the Rams on Sunday night. And in Foxborough, despite the turnovers, despite everything, you look and all of a sudden in the third quarter, they're only down a touchdown on the road in a monsoon against the undefeated Patriots. The fact of the matter is the ingredients are there. You've got a chef who has no idea how to cook them. And maybe one day he figures it out, but the dude's got to go to culinary school a little longer. And there's been too many instances in the NFL of chefs not being able to figure out how to cook those ingredients before they go bad. We've seen this before. And when that happens, what happens? No one gets to eat, man. No one gets to try that sweet creme brulee because Freddie Kitchens has no idea what the recipe is. Things come and go too quick in the NFL, and this goes back to, if you pay attention in the league. And I said it before, I thought the Browns were going to struggle early on. I picked them to go 9-7 with most of those wins coming in the second half of the season. I still think they can make the playoffs, but when it comes to the long term, Freddie Kitchens is not the guy. If you think you've got a team right now that can consistently be a contender for the next decade, be a perennial playoff team, or at least a team like we've seen the Ravens and Steelers be for the last 15 years, where you know more often than not they're going to make it, if you want that in Cleveland, you can't stick with Freddie Kitchens. It's as simple as that. You don't want to learn on the fly. Look at the Bears. Things come and go so quickly in this league. Preseason Super Bowl darlings can't beat the Chargers at home now. I talk about it all the time, and look, I know Jacksonville got hot 2 years ago, but the fact of the matter is they were a play away from going to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now they're the third best team in their division. Got to make hay while the sun shines, man. And the Browns don't have time to wait around is the thing. You look, a lot of people are already ragging on Zach Taylor and the Bengals at 0-8. Bengals have time to figure it out. You can resurrect Vince Lombardi. Bengals weren't making the playoffs with the roster they have right now. They've got time to let Zach Taylor mess around, fiddle around, figure things out. The Browns don't have time to do that. They've got to figure it out now. The AFC is down. The roster is loaded. Myles Garrett, OBJ. I don't have to tell you guys the names. You know who they are. But then you look at Baker Mayfield. We're past week 8, 6 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions. Get out of town, man. Freddie Kitchens is just not, he's not putting the puzzle together. He's not. It's as simple as that. And look, I know this isn't a hot take. A lot of people agree with me and a lot of people have, but if you're Cleveland, how many times do you screw it up? It's been like this forever. So the question becomes, who are you going to replace him with? If it's me, give me Jay Gruden. Give me Jay Gruden all day. Offensive-minded. You saw the wonders he did with Andy Dalton in Cincinnati, then went to Washington. So, hey, he knows how to handle a dysfunctional franchise. He's been doing it for, the last 5 years? He's always overachieved when you look at the toilet of a franchise he was working for in Washington. Jay Gruden's my guy from the Browns. We'll see. If you want to have fun with it, Jim Harbaugh's out there. Well, he's not out there. He could be out there. He had a nice bounce back on Saturday night, but, Notre Dame always finds a way to wet themselves on the big stage at some point in the season. Harbaugh's out there. Here's another one to watch. If things don't go as planned, down south, where they like barbecue and big hats, Jason Garrett. If Jason Garrett is relieved of his duties, as they say in Dallas, he's always overachieved, right? Took an undrafted Tony Romo, did wonders with him. Dak Prescott, I think a 4th-round pick, doing wonders with him. So there's guys out there who, when you look at it, undoubtedly. Okay, so there's a guy out there, Jay Gruden. But maybe Jason Garrett, maybe John Harbaugh's out there. Marvin Lewis is out there. I've always said Marvin, I was ready for him to go in Cincinnati, but the fact of the matter is he elevated to that franchise somewhere it had not been in 15 years and consistently had them as a contender. I know they never won a playoff game, but he made it 5 years in a row, and if you're the Browns right now, I think you take that. So, there's a lot to be said. And look, a week from now, we're going to know so much more. The Browns going to Denver this week. Joe Flacco not playing. As if Joe Flacco didn't scare you, the guy replacing him is Brandon Allen. Because Joe Flacco allegedly, after speaking out against the coaching staff on Sunday, Flacco allegedly has a neck injury that's going to keep him out. Brandon Allen, who I had to look up, I thought that they had the kid from Missouri, Drew Luck. But anyways, Brandon Allen is going to fill in and play. And he was a 6th-round pick of the Jaguars. And couldn't cut it there. Just couldn't catch up to old Blake Bortles a couple years back. So that's who you have to beat. Yeah, Drew Lock is there with the Broncos. Apparently he is not ready yet. That's promising. 42nd overall pick. But look, man, if they go out to Denver, and I know it's on the road, I know that out there in Denver, historically a tough place to play, but if you're the Browns, you cannot lose to Brandon Allen. By the way, I mentioned the record last year, end of October, the Cleveland Browns had 2 wins under then head coach Hugh Jackson. He got fired before November could get underway. It might be the 1-year anniversary of when he got fired, actually. We're right around there. The end of this October, the Cleveland Browns, just like last year, have 2 wins. And like I said, don't be mad at Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens didn't hire Freddie Kitchens. Be mad at John Dorsey. I've never been mad at a coworker for being incompetent. If you apply for a job and get the job, you're doing what people do, what people are supposed to do. Question your boss for hiring the person. None of the other 31 teams would have hired Freddie Kitchens. And I think that's something people should ask themselves. Would anyone else be doing this right now? No matter what you're doing, would anyone else be doing this right now? And none of the other 31 teams would have hired him. 0. And right now we're seeing why. You would think I'm a Browns fan. I'm just frustrated. I feel the frustration rubbing off on me. It's ridiculous to not be able to get it right after this long. Browns could make a splash this week. The trade deadline day is here. Today's Tuesday. Trent Williams, obviously the guy to watch. And look, you guys know this comes out on Tuesday mornings, so I'm sure as soon as this episode gets released, something big will happen. But whatever, trades are trades. Historically, not a lot happens in the NFL. Nothing quite like we see in baseball or basketball. But Trent Williams is a guy. And look, wherever he goes, if he goes anywhere, that'll be fun. An offensive lineman can help a lot, but they're not going to be that big impact splash as if a potential starting quarterback or an A.J. Green, someone like that, were to get traded. But it's insane to me that the Washington Redskins, an obvious train wreck of an organization, have pushed out one of the league's best players to the point of him saying, I'm out. Just trade me or I'll sit here on the couch. That's what Trent Williams has decided to do, and that's his right. But our response in the media and really the NFL is just like, oh, the Redskins being the Redskins, ha 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 ha, LOL. Should the NFL not step in and do something here? And there are so many poorly run organizations in all of sports, and the leagues just don't seem to care. How does the NBA not care that the New York Knicks playing in Manhattan, in the middle of Manhattan, are a joke? They have an owner that gets in arguments with fans. The Jets, same thing, a laughingstock in the biggest market in the country. I think Washington, D.C.'s, it's up there. Maybe it's top 10 market in the country. Maybe 7 or 8, maybe 6. And you've got an organization that is so bad that one of their best players, and one of the league's best players, is like, yeah, I'd rather sit home and get fined than come play for you guys. There should be some sort of rule, right? I just don't. And I mean, not only that, but there should be some sort of rule. The Bengals haven't won a playoff game in 30 stinking years. Everyone in sports gets held to the highest of standards, except the owners, except the guys at the very, 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 very top of the mountain, except for Dan Snyder and Mike Brown. Dan Snyder, I mean, just literally a goon. I don't know what he does. Let's see how he made all his money. I should know this, but I don't. But the guy, no matter what he does, he can't run an NFL franchise. We know that. I mean, Bill Gates, genius. By all accounts, great man. But just does not seem, he's not a guy who you would want, being the head chef at a kitchen, right? Looks like a guy who eats pimento sandwiches every day, and that's great. Just because you're good. Oh, so Snyder made his money in advertising. That's nice. Made his sister max out her credit cards. That's a respectable thing to do. They went to doctor's offices. That's good. He became the CEO of a New York Stock Exchange listed company at age 32. But that just wasn't good enough for him, was it? He had to ruin a franchise. He really expanded the company. That's good. Anyways, he bought the team in 99, and I mean, just foolishness since. And look, Mike Brown was handed down the team in Cincinnati. It's just amazing to me the people that they will let buy NFL franchises. Trent Williams begging to go somewhere else. And the NFL just kind of shrugs. Yeah, it's just a guy's life. We know this franchise is garbage. They have a racist team name, but I mean, come on. Players hate the organization. Kyle Shanahan, who never says anything publicly, took a dump on him recently, but whatever. Things are fine. Turn your head. It's amazing to me. Anyways, Trent Williams is a big piece. Cleveland obviously interested. New England, we know, was interested. And again, nothing real fun here, even if he gets dealt. Is he an important piece? Yes. Is he a piece that's really going to draw a lot of interest? No, as far as talking points and whatnot, no, because he's an offensive lineman, so if it's not your team, you probably won't care all that much. I mean, the fun thing to potentially happen would be a trade scenario, and this has been kicked around a little bit, involving Trent Williams and Odell Beckham Jr. We know the Browns are interested. We know that Odell Beckham Jr. has not lived up to the hype. It would make sense. I've been over it before. I mean, the Browns have weapons on offense. I mean, between Chubb and Jarvis, and Njoku's hurt right now. But I mean, they've got guys over there who can make it work. And I've said elite teams rarely have top flight receivers like OBJ. Elite teams do typically have elite offensive linemen like Trent Williams. So we'll see if anything happens. It should be fun. Regardless, I mean, if the Redskins don't deal him, he should be allowed to live stream himself hitting Dan Snyder in the face with a shovel. Speaking of the New England Patriots, this was fun. There's been some chatter about what Tom Brady will do after the season, and Adam Schefter brought it up last week on Monday Night Countdown when I was recording this episode with my buddy Mitchell King. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, go back and listen to it. It's still very relevant. It was very different from most of what I've done on this podcast. Just kind of, kicked the can around a little bit. Had some fun. I was pretty angry in that podcast. Got overcharged for some beers, but what are you going to do about it? You give them 1 star on Google. That's what you do. But anyways, Adam Schefter brought it up last week. There's context around Tom Brady that would suggest he's thinking about not playing football next year. Maybe not playing football next year in New England. Maybe not playing at all. And look, we as a society, we don't think he would go somewhere else, but I've had a little bit of a theory on this, all right? Tom Brady's the greatest of all time. I think it's about as much of a consensus as you can have on agreeing that an athlete is the greatest of all time at his position. And Bill Belichick gets credit for being the greatest coach of all time. And this is, of course, if you know me, you know this is where I remind you that before Tom Brady, old Billy Belichick had a losing record as an NFL head coach. By the way, did you see Belichick's son on the sidelines? I mean, he looks like Stephen Avery from Making a Murderer. Google him. And I get why he looks like that, because you can tell if he shaved all that hair, he'd look just like his dad, and you don't want people, you get that. Anyways, back on point here. Bill Belichick's not a bad coach, of course. He's a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, legendary head coach. But go back and look. Behind every legendary NFL head coach, Hall of Fame quarterback. What a coincidence. How about that? And there's a part of me that has to wonder, and maybe it's a part of me that loves conspiracy theories, because I do. I don't believe most of them, or really any of them, I don't think. But I enjoy listening to them. I enjoy crazy people and crazy things. And part of me has to wonder, does Brady want to spend the final 2-3 years of his career somewhere else? And the point in that would be to show everyone who raves about Belichick and raves about Robert Kraft, the brains of this operation. Part of me wonders if he wants to say, oh, look what happens when I leave. Look at the titles I brought here. 6 of them. 0 before I was here. And part of me says, remember that Seth Wickersham story last year about the internal struggle in New England, the amount of egos in there, all tugging at each other? Is Tom Brady confident enough right now that he's ready to be done with it? Add one more feather to his cap and say, yeah, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to add another layer to the greatness. Go somewhere else. Win a title elsewhere. Remind everyone who was the engine of that dynasty for the last 20 years almost now. And look, it's more likely that he's thinking about retiring than doing that, because it would be a risk to his legacy to do that. It's much more likely that he's thinking about retiring, but isn't it a lot more fun to think about him going somewhere else and playing for a different team? Can you imagine him on this Bears team right now? I mean, get out of town. So we'll see what happens there. By the way, how weird was it after the game on Sunday to see Odell Beckham Jr. give Tom Brady the GOAT cleats? And he didn't do it to honor Tom Brady, by the way, because here's why he did it. He did it for the gram. He did it for the same reason people go to brunch. He waited until he knew all the cameras would be around. He could have asked an equipment manager to do that and done it quietly and no one would have known. And Tom Brady could have set it on a mantle in his basement with the rest of the junk people have given him over the years. He could have got Tom Brady's phone number. He could have sent it to Gillette Stadium. No, he wanted the Instagram hype. He wanted the post from Bleacher Report that is just, the caption just says, respect. One word, respect. I don't know if they actually posted it, but that's why he does this stuff. I'm sure they did. They run a fine Instagram. But he lives for that stuff. How agonizing is that if you're a Browns fan? He's so un-Cleveland. And if you're a listener who's on either of the coast, Cleveland, you know what's funny? The Indianapolis Colts right now are what Cleveland wants to be. Not flashy, just lunch pail, win games, grind it out. It's ugly. But instead, they've got this. Can you imagine how many times Odell Beckham Jr. takes a selfie on Snapchat? You ever been around people like that? Before they post it, they've got to take like 17. I hope you haven't. And if you have, get new friends. I will say, now in defense of Odell Beckham Jr., he got really taken out of context last week, and this is like 6 days old now, but no one really pointed it out. He said this to the Cleveland media. He said that 2 or 3 years ago, it was his dream to play with Tom Brady, but then every single headline on Twitter made it seem like it was his current dream to play with Brady or Belichick. And this I mean, this is simply why athletes distrust the media, and I get both sides. As a media outlet, you want those clicks, so you're going to tease the story, right? You're going to put a little chunk out there that makes people say, ooh, I want to know more. But often it gets done irresponsibly, and not by the reporter. It's usually by a 22-year-old social media manager intern person whose sole responsibility is to get numbers on the website, get engagement, get retweets. How miserable is that? What a miserable thing that's a job. And a similar thing happened with Jarvis Landry. He said the Browns would win, and in the context of his comment, it was clear he was just being confident. He wasn't trying to be arrogant and make a guarantee. He backtracks a minute later, but no, you already said it, Jarvis. That was the media's response. He was just blabbering to give people quotes. That's all he was done. Athletes do that all the time, and it's very nice of them. But when they backtrack on something a minute later, and it's not really backtracking, it's clarifying. There's no professional sports reporter who's done it for more than 2 or 3 years who doesn't realize that these are, kind of prepackaged answers. 95% of what you get from athletes, that's what it is. But apparently clarifying comments no longer necessary. In the age of Twitter journalism, and it's not all journalists, it's a very, very small portion of them. But then they ruin the reputations of others. Retweets should be illegal, that's what I'm saying. What if at least limit them, right? That's too much power. You should get shocked every time you hit the retweet button. How bad do you want this? You're limited. You get shocked every time you hit it. It's frustrating. So there you go. I'm defending the Browns a little bit. Defending Odell Beckham Jr. a little bit. He did get treated unfairly last week. But come on, with the cleats? And did you see the way Brady was looking at it? Like, oh, thanks, buddy. Like it was Christmas time and they were co-workers and OBJ brought Tom Brady a gift, but Brady didn't have one for him. So he was like, oh, yeah. And then, of course, you had Baker Mayfield in the background looking on like a jealous girlfriend. Just a bad look. Just a bad look. It reminds me so much of when Chad Johnson was in Cincinnati. There was a point where it became so clear that Chad was much more interested in the attention off the field than he was on the field. He was doing boxing in the offseason. He was doing reality shows. He was doing live streams on the internet before live streams were a thing. It was on Justin.tv. And it was a big deal. And he'd sit there and he'd smoke a cigar, and it was clear that he had zero personality back then. He developed one, but without being lobbed those questions, you could just see him there trying to come up with things and couldn't. In this day and age, you don't have to worry about that because you get trained constantly on Instagram, Snapchat, and all of those sort of things to kind of develop a personality. But it's what happened with Chad. It's what happened with Ocho. He became much more interested in being a celebrity off the field than on it, and that's when things went south for those Bengals teams. Going to happen with the Browns too. Again, get rid of the guy. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just don't think he's a good football guy. Meanwhile, talking nothing but Patriots-Browns this episode, but I think this is the most excited I've been for a game all season. Will be Patriots-Ravens this weekend on Sunday Night Football. The homie Chris Collinsworth and company taking that one on. And I've said it all year. The Lamar Jackson show, exciting to watch. Don't think it's sustainable. Don't think it gets you to a Super Bowl. Baltimore averaging 204 yards in the run game per game this year. And that leads the league by a long shot. San Francisco next at 181 yards on the ground, so that's a difference of 23 yards a game. Bengals barely averaging 23 yards a game. But, look, New England's going to say, hey, we're going to sell out to stop the run. Let's see you air it out, and let's see what Lamar Jackson and company can do. And I just don't see them being able to go toe-to-toe with Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson for that matter. The Ravens have done well, and they've done well running the ball, but at some point, to win in this league against elite competition, you've got to throw it. And we've not seen them be able to do that yet. But I'm looking forward to that one. Top two scoring offenses. Those are the only two teams in the league, by the way, averaging more than 30 points per game each, or at least 30 points. I think they're at 30 and 31. Baltimore 30, New England 31. And then you look at New England's defense, obviously on a pace to be historic. Baltimore gets a chance to make a statement this Sunday. What a time to be alive. Midseason MVP I wanted to talk about. That's always fun to me. There's some people who are too, and look, I get it. I'm as grouchy as they come at times. But there's some people who act too cool. They'll say things like, if we're giving away a midseason MVP, that'd be crazy because that means the NFL only played half a season. Wouldn't that be historic? Yeah, it would be. But guess what? Some of us aren't curmudgeons. We like to enjoy our time on Earth. So I'm trying to figure... I've got it narrowed down to 3, and I think a lot of people have it narrowed down to 3. The obvious choice... well, there's really 2 obvious ones right now, right? A is Aaron Rodgers, 7-1 Packers. He is just sharp as an old thumbtack right now, and it's as simple as that. I mean, they've had injuries. Devontae Adams has missed a couple now. New head coach, first time head coach, and they're sitting pretty in a tough division, and they've won some tough games. I don't care if Mahomes was out Sunday night. You go in to that stadium, into Arrowhead Stadium in prime time and pull one out, it's impressive. The other guy that I think everyone knows, Russell Wilson. What I did not realize about Russell Wilson, through 8 weeks this year, Russell Wilson, 17 touchdown passes, 1 interception. 1 interception. 17 touchdown passes. And the pieces around him are not good. His offensive line, bottom half of the league, probably bottom third of the league. It's bottom third of the league. I'm confident in saying that. And you look at the Seahawks sitting at 6-2 in a very, very, very tough division, and they've won some tough games so far. The guy, and look, I get annoyed, same thing about the Heisman Trophy. If you're giving it to the best player in college football, Chase Young, Ohio State, that's your guy. That's your Heisman Trophy winner. Most valuable player in football, but it doesn't go to Chase Young. It doesn't go to the best player. It goes to the best, usually the best quarterback, occasionally the best running back. It typically goes to the scoring machine of college football. But they just change the name of it. That's what bothers me. So MVP, most valuable player. If you're looking at the player who is most valuable, and this is why I said Andrew Luck should have won it last year, because the Colts would have been a train wreck without him. If you're looking at the player who is the most valuable, you can make an argument, not the best player, but the most valuable player. The one who, it really should be a war thing like baseball, wins above replacement. I don't know if you can do that, but that's what value is. I think you got to look at Michael Thomas. Saints wide receiver. Saints are 7-1. Thomas is 26 years old. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but I made a note of it. He is on pace for 1,750 yards. That would be 6th all-time. He is on pace for 146 catches. That would be an NFL record, most all-time. And he's done it mostly without Drew Brees. He has done it mostly with Teddy Bridgewater, who hasn't played real football in almost 3 years. Oh, I know why I wrote down 26 years old, because that, right now, 1 and 2 on the all-time receiving yards list, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, those two were also 26 when they had those seasons. Something about 26. I was a loser at 26. Absolute dork. But these guys rocking it out. Michael Thomas, I think you have to make a case for him at this point. I don't know. I didn't put a lot of thought into this, if you can't tell. But that's got to be... There's really no one standing out that much, right? I mean, obviously, those 3 stick out. Rodgers and Russell Wilson are your obvious guys. Lamar Jackson in the hunt. I'm so confused on how to feel about Lamar Jackson. Is he valuable to the team? Absolutely. He brings something else that really no other quarterback has, but how sustainable is it? If he goes, let's pull up the Ravens schedule here. Let's say that they get beat by double digits against the Patriots this week. Then they get the Bengals. They should win that game by 2 million. But then they got to go up against the Texans and Deshaun Watson. Then they got to go to Los Angeles, take on the Rams on Monday Night Football. And then the San Francisco 49ers, Buffalo Bills, probably the 2 best defenses in back-to-back weeks. 2 of the 3 best. Obviously, New England number 1. So, let's see what happens here. Let's, before we lump Lamar in there, because he's been absolutely valuable, no doubt about that. But has he done things that, I don't know. You guys get it. Maybe you don't. I don't know if I get it. Again, confuses me. We've really not seen anything like that. They're really running sort of a college offense. It's interesting. But there's really no one else who, I mean, Baker, Mayfield, Carson Wentz were guys people talked about before the season. Neither one has gone over the top. I mentioned Baker, 6 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. The Eagles sitting at 4-4. Rumors of dysfunction flying around there. Oh, dysfunction. Who even knows what's going to happen with Philly? Carson Wentz this year. Let's see. He's thrown 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Nothing that jumps out at you. There's just really no one. This is what makes this a fun NFL year. Especially in the NFC. I mean, look, should something happen with New England, let's say Tom Brady gets hurt, let's say miraculously they lose in the second round of the playoffs, the AFC is wide open. Chiefs defense, I was watching that Chiefs game on Sunday night. You know how Chris Collinsworth runs the PP, what is it? The P, whatever it is, Pro Football Focus. And they give ratings. They say, you know, so-and-so is 73rd out of 123 at his positions. No one on the Chiefs defense was in the top 70 at their position. Patrick Mahomes is great. But that Chiefs defense, the defense win championships, that's a cliche for a reason, because it's true. And then the NFC is just wide open. I mean, you like the Packers, you like the Niners, you like the Saints, but would you be shocked to see any of them get beat by the Cowboys, the Vikings, Seahawks, Rams? No, you wouldn't. And that's why we, I guess, don't give away midseason MVP awards. All those curmudgeons are right. Listen, I appreciate everyone tuning in. Back on track this week. Had a lot of fun. Thanks to my guests for coming on so far. Those episodes are different. If you go back week 1 with Craig Smiley, Raymond Rotella and I did this one morning hungover after the Jets Monday night game against the Browns. We weren't really hungover, but by podcast standards, I don't know why I would think that's appealing to you as a listener. And then last week, Mitchell King and I got together in a hotel in Manhattan and talked about all kinds of things regarding football in general. Again, that's kind of an evergreen episode, so if you're looking for something else to kick around, give that one a listen from last week, and give those first 3 minutes a shot. Was fooling around with the audio a little bit to make it work out. My name is Matt Edwards. If you want to follow me on the internet, on Twitter, I am at Matt Edwards. On Instagram, I am good old Matthew. I really just post food pictures from around New York there and kind of tell you what I'm doing throughout the week. Not that you care. More important than anything, if you like the podcast and you have a friend that likes football, say, hey, Jimmy, or hey, Samantha, or hey, Mr. Pilanaki. Check out the Good Old Football Podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. Hopefully it's something different. Any suggestions, feel free to shoot them to me on these aforementioned social media sites. Appreciate you tuning in. We're halfway through the season, getting fun. Thanks for tuning in. It's been the Good Old Football Podcast.